Okay, here's my idea for helping with stress and burnout. Take a minute to get outside, no matter what the weather's like. And you know what? If you have to bundle it with taking kids to soccer practice, throw that baby in a stroller and walk around the soccer fields while your older kids are at soccer practice. Figure out a way to get outside every day. And the other thing is try to find some community. Even if your community looks like one or two other homeschoolers who can really encourage you. And if you don't have that, come online with us. Join the Sonlight app and the Sonlight community here online. And we will support you and encourage you. The last thing I think is learn to say no. When your kids are 10 and under, be very choosy about what activities you agree to put them in and what things you agree to do outside of home. Home and maybe your part-time job, whatever that is. Be committed to just really focusing on them. Time will come when you will be running them all over creation when they hit their teenage years. And there is a season and a stage for every activity in your life. So focus on home for now. Learn to say no. Get outside.
So how do you banish burnout? What I would do as I homeschooled my kids was I would take moments and go outside and just enjoy being outside, enjoy flowers, take my cup of coffee with me, and just know that it is all going to be okay, and take a few moments, pray a little bit, and just be glad to be here at home with my kids with the opportunity to homeschool them. We went 23 years, and there was many times I looked at the yellow bus and wondered what it would be like to send the kids off on the yellow bus. Never did it. My kids often wondered what it would be like to go on the yellow bus. And often then when I described they would get up early and they would come home, they chose to be at home with me anyway. They had friends that told them that they would spend a couple hours every evening doing homework. And so we both would just remember what the other side was like. So I'm praying for you guys. I hope you guys have a great year finishing it up, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
My favorite way to prevent burnout is to figure out what activities I enjoy and reduce stress, and then keep them close at hand. So I'm in my office where I spend a lot of time, and I keep all of these things within arm's reach. So I always have a giant water cup and a coffee mug so I can stay hydrated and so I can get my caffeine. I also keep my journaling Bible down here, as well as my favorite pens and highlighters, so that Bible study is just fingertips away whenever I want to do my Bible study or whenever I know I need it. Same thing with my Kindle. I take my Kindle everywhere, but I charge it down here so that a good book is always close at hand as well. And then I keep sweet treats in my filing cabinet here. So right now it's Girl Scout cookie season, so I have several flavors to choose from, but a sweet treat is never more than, a few fingertips away. The other thing, I'm in an office that has a door, so if I need quiet, I just close the door and nobody comes in here. And then you can see my big window reflection here. I sit across from a big picture window where I can look out and see the sun, which is super helpful, especially in the wintertime. If it's cold and I don't actually want to go outside, I can at least see the sun out there. The other thing is that I always wear athletic attire if I'm going to be at home, because that makes it super easy to get up and work out, whether I want to stretch here at my desk, take my dog for a walk, or do a full-on workout. So figure out for you what those activities are that make you feel good, that get your head on straight, and make time for them. Plan to squeeze them in wherever you can, and I promise you, you will feel less burnt out, less stressed, and you'll find that every area of your life, homeschooling, wifing, momming, whatever it is, becomes a lot easier.
Hey friends, we just got back from about a 6-mile walk, and that led us to think about what to do to help you when you have homeschool burnout or stress. And so our first thing that came to our mind was move your body. Sheila and I are fortunate enough to live not very far from one another, and we could not remember how long we have been meeting most mornings to do some form of exercise, whether it was running when we were younger, hanging out at the Y, or like we do right now, just walking for a good hour and a half each day.
Yes, and so it allows us to be together and to solve all the world's problems. We talk about our lives, we talk about our kids, we talk about things that are stressing us out. We pray for each other as we walk. We problem solve together. We brainstorm ideas for how to handle whatever it is that's in our lives. And like Lisa said, we've been doing it for a long, long time. So we're not homeschooling now, but back when we were homeschooling, we were still doing this, and it was just so great to have support. We support one another in so many things, and our husbands allow us to have that morning time. When the kids were younger, they would keep the kids while they got ready in the morning, so we would have to get up early in order to fit that in, which means we have to put ourselves to bed at night so that we could have that morning time.
But the day goes so much better because we have moved our bodies. I am able to go to bed earlier. When we were homeschooling, Sheila has kids that are a little bit older than mine, so that was encouraging. If we were burnt out, we were just available to say, oh, well, this is what I did, or even sometimes we'll bring the kids over and let's do grammar together, or can you help with math, or whatever that was. So I guess the bottom line is find you a friend because that will solve a lot of those problems by just making that friendship a priority. I believe we do a really good job at making our friendship a priority, even now that we're not homeschooling or, you know, we do lots of different things in our lives, but we do make it a priority to catch up with one another, mostly every day during the week, sometimes once a day on the weekend, but that really helps with stress and burnout because you're not by yourself.
Yes, and exercise raises your endorphins and is good for you. So get out there and get your steps.
I think one of my top tips for burnout is to say it out loud. Just to say it out loud to someone who is very supportive of you and your homeschool. That might be a friend who also homeschools, who will understand, or a family member who's very supportive. I have family members who haven't homeschooled before, but they're very supportive of what we're doing. And it might be your husband, or even at times my children. I've said to them, you know what, I think I'm just at the point of burnout here. So we need to do something different. Find some refreshing things to do and come up with some ideas, and they can help with that. So if you don't have a family member or friend, someone that you feel like it's a good time to talk to them about it, then I would say always the one who has the hairs on your head numbered is the one that you can go to, and he can give you the encouragement that you need.
My top tip for reducing stress and burnout while homeschooling is actually to find something to do for yourself. It may be finding some quiet time for yourself. It may be finding time to get out of the house for yourself, or it could be what I just got finished doing, which was doing a good sweaty workout. So find something that is really you time, and it really does help relieve stress and just make things go more smoothly because you are taking care of yourself, and that is important.
One of the ways I have avoided burnout is by putting something fun on my to-do list. I'm a list girl. That's the kind of mom I am. So it's on the list, it gets done. If it's not on the list, it doesn't get done. So if we needed to take a walk or pick flowers or bake cookies, I put it on the list. If singing in the car made me happy, I put it on the list. And if it wasn't on the list, it very often did not get done. So my advice, include fun on your to-do list, and then it becomes part of your day.
Hello and welcome to today's Homeschool Helps and Hacks, Banish Burnout and Stress Less. I'm Sunny, I'm Sonlight's community manager, and I'm a mom of 2 Sonlight kids, and I'm being joined by Amber and Jonna today. Before we dive in, I do want to remind you guys this session is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it later. And also, please drop your questions and comments into the chat because we would love to know where you're watching from or how we can help you with your own unique situations. So let's start with some intros. Amber, I see you on my top left, so we'll start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and where you are in your homeschool journey? Since today is all about burnout, I would love to hear how many years you've homeschooled, how many you have left, how many kids you have, all of that, so that people can get an idea for your experience level when it comes to this topic.
Sure. Thanks, Sunny. I have been homeschooling since 2004. So that feels like a really long time when you say it out loud, right? So my oldest daughter is 25, and I began homeschooling her when she was in pre-K. And I have 5 children. So I think one thing that might lead to some burnout for me is that I have a large gap between child 4 and 5. So when my oldest was 12, I had my 5th child. So we have been on this journey. I have used at least 2 cores that I was specifically involved in, but we've had 3 levels going on at a time in our homeschool journey, various times. I know what it's like to school a senior and a kindergartner and have all that range in between. So at this moment, I have 2 out of college, 1 in college. I have a senior in high school and a 7th grader. So that's where I'm at. And this is a very good topic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, great. I'm happy to have you here. Jonna, same question for you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, how long you've been on this road, how long you think you'll be on this road, and about your kids.
Well, let's see. I started this road back in '99. I made our first purchase and started, I think, like January of 2000 with our oldest, who is now, I think he turns 28 this year. So 23 years of homeschooling. We have 4 kids. All have graduated at this time, but I'm still in the homeschool realm where I don't know how many years ago I became a director of a co-op that we were involved in. And so I have stayed involved with other families homeschooling, and I still continue doing that. I am not only do I work for Sonlight, I have director of a co-op and a cover school admin here in Alabama. But all 4 of my kids have graduated using Sonlight. There's a 9-year gap between mine. So unlike Amber, where she had a senior with a kindergarten, I had a freshman with a kindergartner going. And that's my boys. I have boys on the end and girls in the middle. So that was kind of a unique, bookend with the boys. And there's 4 years between number 3 and number 4. So like one finished high school and another one started high school. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. And I love that you guys both mentioned those wide gaps. Even though I only have 2 kids, I have 5 years between them. So that's kind of wide for, 2 siblings. And so I have 20 years of homeschooling, total in my future. I'm a little over halfway there. I started in 2012 with my oldest, and my youngest will graduate in 2032. So I'm right in the middle of that. Of if you're watching and you feel like I'm never going to be done, I'm kind of in that point with you. So totally get that. And I love to, that you ladies have so many years of experience and you're still here in the homeschool world. That gives encouragement, I think, to people that maybe feel like it's going to be forever. You're going to be homeschooling forever. So let's start talking about that topic of burnout. One, I want to reassure you, if you're watching, it's totally normal and it can happen to you at any time, but it doesn't make you bad at homeschooling. I know the first time that occurred to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I love homeschooling. What's happening now? I'm not happy. Do I need to make a big change? So we're going to tell you kind of some ideas and tips and tricks to get through that, or figure out if you actually do need to make a change. Also, I think it's very common in the winter time. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere with us, this is the time of year that everyone kind of starts to feel like school is just dragging on. And if you live in a cold area, you can't get outside as much. So that's kind of hard. Also, the end of the year, I know for me personally, the first 30 weeks of a Sonlight IG instructor's guide fly by. And then those last 6 weeks, I feel like are as long as the rest of the year. So I don't know if you ladies are like that, but I've always felt like that as well. So
Sunny, that's so great. I was going to say, for some of us, the first 10 weeks fly by and then it gets really slow. Sunny gave 30 weeks of flying by. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was only going the first half of the year, but that's okay.
No, that's
well, I'm excited, to talk about this topic. I think it hits everybody, and personality plays a huge part in that too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I say 30 weeks, but I'm that type A that my attitude is kind of suck it up and get through it. So that could be why I go a little bit longer, but yeah, it still hits all of us. So, so let's talk a little bit about determining your why. I know for me, when things get hard, I go back to why am I even homeschooling in the first place? Why do I put myself through this? So ladies, how do you determine what that is? And how do you cling to that when you feel like there's nothing else left or no other motivation to keep going?
I was going to say, I think Amber and I have had this conversation not too long ago, but it is hard to sometimes cling to your why. But that's one of the first things I think a family needs to do is come up with their why. I mean, are you schooling because you just need to get through the year and you have plans after this year? Are you homeschooling because of where your family focus is? And then reevaluate that why. It's not a bad thing when you start feeling that burnout. Maybe why am I homeschooling? Is it because we want the best for our kid and we feel that keeping them home right now is the best option for them? And why has God put me here? And then I see Amber about to say something.
No, I was going to say, I think the why can change, but Sunny, you're absolutely right. If you don't know the purpose behind what you're doing, it's going to become very difficult. And also, if you don't have people in your life to kind of remind you of that, sometimes, I know for some of us, we have maybe a bigger community than others, but even having one or two people who can really remind us of why we're doing what we're doing. And, you know, you said something earlier about burnout, and I was thinking, to be fair, I think every occupation or every career choice gets to a point where you feel like you've got some burnout going on, right? So that isn't, I think that's something else at least I do. I tend to forget that. Like, and that's one of the whys that brings me back sometimes is this is what I think is best for our family. And I think this is the way education works best. And when I get to that burnout feeling, I think, okay, well, what would be the other alternative? Would I not feel burnt out driving them back and forth to all their school activities if they were in traditional school? Would I not feel burnt out? Whatever it is, right? So I think that's another thing to be fair about, that there is always that season of like, wow, this feels really hard. Why am I doing this? And so, Sunny, I don't know if if you would like us to share our whys or just say it's important to have them.
I think both are good. If you have, a few, it's hard to narrow it down to one, right?
Yeah, right.
Say that I have 3,000 reasons I homeschool.
Yes.
But if you're in a situation for burnout or where you're feeling burnout, what are maybe some whys, for people that maybe haven't figured out? I know I didn't really have a why for the first 3 or 4 years. It was just, oh, we're learning and this is fun. Let's keep going.
Yes.
And I really had not thought about it. And then, it was about 3 or 4 years in when I realized I wanted to keep going that I started to evaluate, okay, why do I want to keep going? Yeah. So maybe some ideas for people that feel a little lost or why they're not sure why they're doing it.
Well, I was thinking of one. I was talking to my sister-in-law and said I was going to be doing this. And she's been homeschooling for a long time too. And she said, oh, I wouldn't even know where to start. And I said, well, here's, what do you think if I just asked you? And she said, well, I love reading to my kids. I love learning that way. And I thought, yeah, that's really good. Not to be dumb, but sometimes we forget because we get so used to what we're doing, we kind of forget that what we actually have, right? And that's a very human thing. So here I am, I get to spend my day a few times a day just reading to my 7th grader. Oh my word, that's such a privilege. And it's so fun. Even today, we're just reading in our history book about Russia and Japan in 1901 and all this stuff. And she was engaged and we were reading it. I just thought I wouldn't trade this for the world. But sometimes when I'm discouraged, I think I would give it up, so fast because I forget just how amazing it is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Being aware of what you have. I know for me, when I finally did kind of settle down on why am I doing this, my oldest was probably 2nd-ish grade. And so she was still at that point where she needed a lot of, parent intensive teaching, and my younger child was like 2.5, 3, and the crazy toddler. I was also working, and so I was trying to figure out, how am I going to do all of these things? And it was when we started looking at the local schools, because we had never actually looked at the schools in the area before, that I started to feel physically ill at the thought of sending my child off to school. And, you know, it was like, we've had all these fun times together, like you said, just reading together, spending that time together. But I knew what she was learning because I was teaching it. We were already having great discussions. And so at that point I thought, oh, I can't put her in school now. I've just got to figure out, do I cut back in work? Do I, you know, find something to do with my toddler so that I can focus on her? You know, and so I reprioritized things to make that possible. And like you said, Amber, now that she's older and a teenager, I love our relationship that we have. It is so much stronger than I think it would have been if she was spending all that time away from us. And my toddler at the time has now outgrown that, and we have great conversations as well. He's now in 3rd grade and we're having a blast. So if you're in those early years with baby, toddler, you know, elementary kids, right, I promise you that gets easier. I think that's the hardest point. Let's talk a little bit about those priorities, though. I talked kind of briefly about, do we shift the priorities? You know, if we find that we're just doing too much, which I think a lot of times as homeschool parents, we're doing a lot and we like to take on a lot. So how do you shift those priorities? We talked a little bit about little kids are harder, but if you've got a vast age range or you've got a lot of kids, how do you figure out who's getting your attention when?
I was going to say, well, shifting your priorities. When I started, like I was going to say earlier, and I have things flying around outside. So if you hear noises, it's called a jet. It's okay. Nothing's happening. I don't know if you can hear it or not. We started out, my husband wanted us to homeschool, and I loved my husband dearly and I was obedient, but I started my years going, I just need to get to the end because then they're going to school. And then it shifted my priorities. I was like you, I was like, I can't send these kids off to somebody else. There's nobody that I want to have educating my kids. I want to be the one that does it. But I always worked like you, Sunny. I've always had a part-time job. So my priorities, I had to like every day, a lot of times just say my priority, number one priority God gave me is my kids and their education. So that has to be my main job. And if the other job suffers, then God will have to figure that out. Because my main job that he gave me is to educate my kids, raise them up and educate them at this time. But then it's the youngest ones I always started with first to getting school done.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have not tried to work part-time with my 5 at home, but it doesn't change. That overcommitment doesn't change, and the need to remind myself that this is my job and this is my priority, that doesn't change either. And I think sometimes as women, we get caught in the trap that we need to be doing more or different or something better or something. There's always something else out there that will make us, I don't know what the word is, feel better about what we're doing. I don't know. But you hit the nail on the head, Sunny, when you said overcommitment, because that was one thing when I told you my sister-in-law and I talked about it. That was one big thing we both said, that if you're going to prevent burnout on any level, even if it's not long-term burnout, but just even right this minute, overcommitment is probably one of the biggest causes, I think, of burnout. And so even like both of you are saying, if you are working a job or you're not working a job, there still has to be this sense that I can have a part-time job or I can work this long and I have this much time for school. And then I need to be careful that the rest of that time isn't eaten up with a lot of commitments, because the first thing I think that goes for us is time with our husbands, our kids, and our home, like keeping it up. That's the first thing. And for me, I know if I commit too much outside, it's fun to have those people say, oh, you're so good at this, or we're so blessed to have you serving in this ministry or whatever, right? Those are props that you don't get from your kids. I'm sorry, but no kindergartner is going to look at you and say, thank you for sacrificing all the thousands of dollars you could be making doing something else to be my mommy and stay home with me. And I know that you're changing the whole trajectory of my life because you care so much. That's never going to happen. So why am I committed to this? And I've got to focus in and not forget that this is my job right now. When I'm homeschooling at that time, that's my career. That's my job. And I'm focused on that. Like Jonna said, the kids that I'm going to spend the most time with, probably school-wise, are going to be those early elementary years. I think even tiny ones, I kind of just pull along with us and listen to when I'm reading science or whatever. I would say that 1st to 4th, 5th grade, those kids in that age range are really my concentration if I have others outside of that. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean I forget about the 6th and 7th and 8th graders. I'm just saying those are the ones that need probably the most attention.
Yeah.
I'd say generally you can let those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, any of those read alouds can be done in the afternoon when the little ones they're already done. Their minds they're done with school.
Yep. So, that's right.
Yeah, and I often joke that I'm homeschooling 2 kids, but I'm really only actively homeschooling 1.5 kids because I'm always focused on who actually needs more attention. So yeah, for us, it's always been those early elementary years, and I relied on baby carriers and baby gates with my younger child when he wasn't school age, so I could focus on his sister. And then as she got older and more independent, you know, now I just check in with her and I'm focused on teaching him. So yeah, make sure that you're taking turns kind of with the kids. That's kind of what I do. And remember, you don't have to do it all, you know, in 2 hours in the morning. I think, Amber, you said something earlier that reminded me, we often look at other families to see what they're doing, or other women, what are they achieving? What are they accomplishing? I need to do that too.
That's right.
But just a reminder, you have to do what works well for you. So if you are not able to get school done in the morning because this child is happier in the afternoon, or you're happier in the afternoon, just shift your schedule a little bit and do it that way. You mentioned other responsibilities too. And I know this is something that for many years, as an achievement-driven personality, I would take on other things because I wanted to hear, oh, you're good at this. I needed something that was beyond just being a mom and a wife and those types of things. And so oftentimes I was drawn to, oh yeah, I can lead this Bible study. Oh yeah, I can run this. I can do that. I can. And all of that. And I eventually learned that, no, I didn't actually have time for that. I'm not God. You know, I need to leave those things to him. But what are some ideas, maybe, if you feel like you are taking on too much, you know, so that you can make sure that you are prioritizing school and you're just not so stretched thin with other responsibilities or being there for other people that you're not able to focus on school or give it the amount of attention that your kids need?
Yeah, if you're not a type A person, this might not resonate with you, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Make a list. This is one just very practical way. Sit down and make a list of all the things you're committed to and decide which ones really are the priority. Because sometimes when we see it in black and white, that's really, really helpful. I think another, for me, and not everyone is in this situation, so I want to be really sensitive to this, but I have a husband who I can trust to tell me, don't do that. Don't take that on. So typically before I say yes to something, I'll check in with Scott and say, what do you think? Is this a good use of my time? Do I actually have time for this? Or is it just my heart wanting to be involved? Right? So if you have someone in your life who can be honest with you about that and say, do you think this is good? And then I think the third thing for me is to remember that this is a stage and it's a very brief stage. So I try to look at it, okay, just because I say no to leading a Bible study this year doesn't mean I'm not going to say yes next year, right? So I think, again, you don't have to have it all this instant. If you have a lot of children under the age of 8, you can say no to everything else because you will not have a boatload of children under the age of 8 forever, right? So I think that's the other thing. They only have one mom. You are the only person who can be mom for those small children. Nobody else can take your place. So I think if God has given you children, then he has called you to be a mom to those children. Now, that doesn't mean you have to homeschool all of them. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is they need your attention. Those other people, those other adults in your life that are trying to get you to do all the things, they don't need you. There are other people who can take your place in all of those areas, but not here.
I had a lady years ago when my kids were little. I often served in our ministries at church. And I was like, I can't figure out how to do my children's ministry. I feel obligated. Here I am. I'm a member of the church. I want to be doing my share, whether it's Sunday school, Bible study, the library, whatever. And she was dying of breast cancer. But she had 2 small girls. And she's like, Jonna, God made you have this children's ministry, which is your children. There is no other ministry right now than that for you to focus on. And if you forget that, you need to remember God already designated your ministry. Don't go looking to fill it somewhere else. And God will bring it along when it's time.
Yes, he will.
And that was such eye-opening to me to hear her say that, because I knew she was looking, she knew she had like a year, maybe. If things didn't turn around, she was dying and she was having to give her kids up and hope that someone could come along. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to pour everything I can into my kids. And so that was very eye-opening that's our ministry. And there is no bigger ministry, because I have kids that serve. I have kids that don't serve. They're not in church right now, but they got big hearts. So
yeah, that's so good. I love what you both said there. Now, what about for somebody maybe who has spent their year getting stretched too thin, and now they do want to cut back, but they feel like they have too much curriculum to get through, or like the year has just gone off the rails for one reason or another? How do they figure out, what do I have to do to wrap up my school year, or, get back on track if they've had a big year like that, where they feel like they just have not been able to stay up with the things they normally would?
Identify your big rocks. And what are a big rock? Your math, your skill set for language arts, reading. Amber, what's another big rock? Is there any?
No, I would say you're right, Jonna. Those are probably the 3 big ones. And I think if you are able to read aloud to them, because of just all of the skills that they get from that, but it doesn't matter which book it is, right? So that we're talking completely off the rails, right? So if there's a book that you could add in there as a nighttime reader or something, yeah, those are the big ones. And remember, with history, gosh, we're never going to cover all of history ever. You could live your whole life.
You're going to repeat it.
You could live your whole life studying history, and you'll never get through it all. Okay. So what you get is wonderful. That's not to say that I don't think in the future to have a systematic approach isn't good. It is good. But John is right. Because the skill subjects are the ones that build on each other. And so if you can just say, look, 30 minutes a day for math, or 15 minutes a day, depending on the ages. Yeah, those big ones. I agree with Jonna.
Yeah, I agree too. And I know it was in another talk like this where somebody said, really part of homeschooling is teaching your kids how to learn, not necessarily all the things they need to know, because then as they mature and get older, they'll develop probably that love for learning, but they also will know how to learn. So if there's anything they want to learn, they'll be able to learn those things because of those basic skills. Let's talk a little bit about the emotional side effects of burnout, that feeling like you're failing, or I've seen comments in our community groups about, oh, I was a mean mom today. I yelled at my kids, or I'm a horrible teacher. I hate homeschool right now. A lot of times, obviously, this is emotional and it's not, the actual facts, but how do you handle that, or how would you encourage a parent who's maybe in that situation?
That's hard. I had many, I still, but when the kids are very young, it's so intense, right? So I feel bad just like rattling things off to be trite, but maybe 1 or 2 will resonate with someone. First of all, Don't put your feet on the floor without just quickly saying, God, I know today I am going to be tempted to yell or be angry with this child in particular. Maybe there's one that's really pushing all your buttons right now. I know that I'm going to be tempted to be angry today. Please help me. It can be as simple as that. Okay. Because I know even for some moms, just to get a prayer out before their feet hit the floor can feel like a lot. Ask God for help. Surrender your day to him. Tell him that you know you're going to be tempted. He promises to give us a way of escape. That verse is not just for children, right? We will not face a temptation that he will not provide a way of escape. Some of us don't spend a lot of time looking for the escape route. And I know that's true for me too. The other thing is ask forgiveness. You are going to blow it. Your kids are going to blow it. If you never blow it, now this doesn't mean sin purposely. So I'm just saying, if you never blow it, then they have this unattainable standard. They need to see a mom and a dad who are willing to apologize. I don't care how little your children are. If you sin against them, pull them aside and apologize. And if you sin against them in front of all the children, apologize in front of all the children. They learn so much from that example. They need to know they are going to blow it and they need to apologize. What does that even look like? Some of us did not grow up seeing anyone apologize or ask for forgiveness for anything. So this is a gift to them. You are not perfect. You might have to say to your children, please watch this video for 45 minutes. I'll be in my room. If someone's bleeding or something's on fire, come get me, right? So give them a safe activity and you go to your room and take a minute if that's what you need. So I think, Satan would love to tell us that we're losers and we're failures and all of that. None of that is true or helpful. I have something, I won't keep talking. I have something to say about that in a second if we come back to it.
I love listening to Amber talk. I was going to say, but when we lose our temper, remind yourself you're human. And unfortunately, we're fallible. And like Amber said, you start, you pray, you ask for forgiveness, and do it with all the kids. You know, they deserve it just like we do. So when I yell at Amber, I always have to apologize.
Well, and the reality is we have an example of so many people. Okay, maybe so many. I think about Elijah, right?
Yeah.
Completely burnt out. That man was completely burnt out. And God did not send an angel to say, you're a failure. You're a loser. What's wrong with you? Right? He sent an angel to feed Elijah and to give Elijah something to drink and to let him rest. And he let Elijah rest and rest and rest. And then he said, okay, here I am. Right? And you're not. Here's the truth, Elijah. There are lots and lots of people who have not bowed the knee to Baal. You're not the only one. Get over yourself. Okay, but he didn't do that until Elijah was rested and fed, right? Okay, so this is my big thing for women that say, I'm a failure, I'm a loser. That's cute. That isn't, okay, I heard this from a speaker once. I thought it was so powerful. Conviction from the Holy Spirit is specific and hopeful. If it's not specific and hopeful, it's not from God. Okay, so I'm a loser as a mother. That is not specific, and I can't do anything about that. How do I stop being a loser as a mom? I don't know. Okay, here's specific. You are impatient. All right, well, patience is a fruit of the Spirit. Now I have hope because the Holy Spirit can help me to become a person that's full of patience. And when I'm in a moment and I know I'm being impatient, I am able to ask for help. That's specific, right? Okay, so when we're thinking about this as moms, you can't just say, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. Okay, but what is specific about your situation and what is your hope? That is what God can show you. We have to tell ourselves the truth.
Yeah, that is so good. I agree with John and Amber. I mean, amazing. I want to say, preach it, sister, and listen to a whole hour of you talking about that.
And it's because I feel it so deeply,
Yeah.
because I have struggled so much with this. I have needed people to speak that truth to me. I can't tell you how many tears I have wept from lashing out in anger at my kids. I just am begging God to please, please give me victory over this. And there were some definite things that I needed to start believing about him. And part of that was that it doesn't all depend on me, right? So I know I tend to get angry when I think it's the force of my personality and my words that are going to change my children's hearts. And that's not it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we are in that wallowing frame of mind, we're so focused on ourselves, we're not able to see the truth oftentimes about what's going on around us. And so remembering, quit looking at yourself, look at these children, look at your family, what's going on there. I love what you said about stepping away. I think when you're homeschooling, you're with your kids a lot. There are always people, I don't know, in your face, if you will.
Yes.
And if you are introverted at all, especially, but I mean, really everyone cannot be with people all the time. Step away. I love what you said about, pray in the morning. For me, if yesterday afternoon, I was like, my kids were fighting with each other. And I was like, I need some space. So I went and got some coffee by myself, so whether that's running errands or doing something by yourself just for a few minutes so that you can get away from whatever chaos is ensuing or things that are going to trigger you maybe to yell at someone or get upset, even if it's not you yourself. Also, as far as being like a bad teacher, there are many, many homeschool parents who do it successfully without any teaching experience. That is something that I never had the desire to teach other people's kids, but when it's your own kids, Jonna, you said, your kids are your ministry. God equips you to teach your children. So, don't focus on that. Like, I'm not a teacher, or I'm not warm and fuzzy, or I'm not XYZ. Quit comparing yourself to everyone else. This is your family, and God has equipped you to raise those children. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the personality differences. I know I've definitely told you all that I'm that uptight perfectionist. I'm a box checker. I have to do everything and I have to do it well, or I'm like stressed to hear. There's always an underlying layer of stress. And I know all the box checkers watching relate to that. But there's also those who are more laid back and struggle with structure and, maybe they're way more fun and warm and fuzzy, but they struggle with keeping things on track. So what are some ideas, if you're experiencing burnout, maybe geared to those different personality types? Because I know my advice oftentimes lends to people with my personality. So what do you guys think?
Hold 1 second.
So Sunny, I have a friend who is much more laid back than I am. And we kind of had that running thing where she'd be like, let's go to the park with the kids. And I'm like, look, I haven't checked my boxes this morning, So she really helped me loosen up a little. But I also know when she was feeling overwhelmed, we would talk about, well, maybe we need to check some boxes. So I think in the Sonlight scenario, I love that we have the IG, right? Okay. So for me, I think even if I'm not a box checker, I don't care how loosey-goosey you are, there has to be some kind of plan. There has to be some, because you have to make sure you're getting through material or you're doing your kids a disservice. But that doesn't have to look the same for all of us, right? So the 4-day schedule, I think, would help some because you have a day to play or parts of 2 days, however you want to break that up. Also, there are so many people who say, hey, we want to get all of history done in 1 day and we want to get all of science done in another day. And that gives us, okay, if that's your bent, go for it, right? So there's some flexibility and freedom in that. I don't know how Jonna is, but I do tend to be a box checker. So I kind of think, all right, I want to make sure I keep moving here, but I have learned to lighten up a little bit. There are days when I think, okay, am I panicking for a good or not? So I think if you're even the loosey-goosey type, it's cool that you could take a lot of sunlight and go outside and do it, or go to a park if that scratches your itch, to not be. You can move things around and change it up. It doesn't have to look the same all the time. So maybe that is helpful.
I say I'm kind of a box checker. I did the 4-day schedule, but I used to let's get everything done. Let's get everything done so that, it's Thursday afternoon and we're done and we can go play and have, it was the reward. We got it all done, go and reward. And my kids knew Friday. And then we moved and our co-op was a different day and it messed everything up. But yeah,
that's when you change the schedule, right? It doesn't have to be the same forever.
And I mean, depending on your personality, some of that you do have to kind of set aside and say, okay, I need to make sure my children are doing math probably daily, especially once you hit those lower elementary years, like 2nd, 3rd grade, when they're really starting, right? And even if it's just 15 to 20 minutes, I need to make sure that's happening, or I'm doing them a disservice when it comes to those sorts of things because of the building nature of it. So even if you say, okay, the one thing we're going to make sure we do is this, and then I'm going to hold the rest of my day open a little bit with my hands open. Anyway, I think for a box checker, we have to be willing to set aside some of our type A-ness and kind of going all the time to say, no, I need to take a breath and smell the roses with my kids. I need, even if I don't want to go outside right now and find moss to look out for science, I can't tell you how many times I would be like, oh, do I have to go pick up a rock to look for those worms? But when I did it, it was so great. I was so happy I did it after. But so I think both personality types, we have to be willing to set aside sometimes what our natural bent is in order to help our kids.
You said something that reminded me. You were saying, math, 15, 20 minutes a day. And I need to get the writing lesson done or whatever. And my boys didn't always like doing the writing lesson. And I have learned, unfortunately for my oldest, I didn't learn it until I had a younger one doing it. Just set a timer.
Yes.
It's more important. Just set the timer and don't have the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was a huge aha moment because I was like, I hate doing writing with my kids. I don't want to. I dreaded it. And then all of a sudden I was more for say, we're going to set the timer and we're going to do as much as we can. And if we don't get it done, that's okay. We're going to move on because this is all you can handle. And it was my freedom to say, we did our 20 minutes or we did, whatever our time limit was.
Yeah, and I think something you said there reminded me too. Be aware of your kids' personalities as well. I am way more rigid than either of my children are, and they both learn very differently. So, homeschooling them really taught me to pay attention to how do they learn best? What is their personality? Amber, you mentioned getting the rock for the science experiment, and I am definitely not a person. I do not want to do anything tedious. Just let me read, learn everything I need to know, and move on.
Yep.
And I have a very creative, hands-on kid who learns so much better from those things. And so I realized, I need to make time for this, or I can have my husband, who is more hands-on, do those science experiments with him. So I do not do any science experiments now with my youngest. He does those with his dad on the weekend, and they have a great time scavenging for rocks and taking all the time they want. And there's not that pressure that I was feeling of, I need you to get through all these things today. Another thing that's super helpful, if you do not have time for an assignment and you want to take it off, if you are a box checker, put an X through it, white it out, mark it off, do something on the actual IG. Because for whatever reason, in my brain, that tells me I consciously made this decision not to do this. And then it's not looking at me like, I didn't get this done. I'm not doing everything I need to do. Let's talk a little bit, though, like we may feel like a failure, like we're doing something wrong, but how do we know when we need to take a break? You mentioned rest earlier for Elijah. How do we know when we actually need to take a break? Or when it's just kind of, we just need an attitude adjustment and we need to push through? When should we rely on others to kind of help us get things done? What do you ladies think about that?
You want to go first, Jonna?
I knew when I was feeling weary, I just needed to take time off. I mean, and I feel like, well, God created the earth in 6 days, and he gave us the example, the seventh day is our day of rest. Our week is supposed to be designed that way. And sometimes our weeks don't happen that way. I mean, we get to the weekend and then we have to clean the house and we have to do all the things. And then we have to go to church and we have to do. And as a mom, we don't sit still. We don't stop. So sometimes there was just days I'd be like, okay, kids, mom needs a day. We're going to take the day off because I need to breathe. I need to do something that's just a reset for me. And it wasn't, I mean, a day does not impact your school year here and there. You could probably put 12 in your school year and it would be fine. You just go a little longer, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think from the time I started homeschooling, I knew I had to take my summer off. So kudos to people who school year round, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you school year round, you also work in weeks off, right? So you do 3 weeks on, a week off, 3 weeks on, or 6 and 1, however it works best for you, but you must rest. I tried one year to not have a spring break. I forget what was going on. I tried not to do a spring break. I thought we'll finish early. It'll be fine. Same-o, same-o. It wasn't same-o. by the end of April, I was like, what is wrong with us? It was really bad. And I remember going, you know what? We skipped a spring break this year. And even though maybe school was lighter, there was never a time from January till April that we just stopped for a week. And that was not a good choice on my part. So I have never done that again. I will never do it again. And I like too what John is saying about even one day. You guys know, and I'm saying this to the moms too, you guys know that in traditional schools, they take days off. We're just going to have a parent-teacher day or whatever.
Teacher in service.
Correct. Teacher in service. So they just spend a day in their classroom by themselves without their students doing whatever. Also, I had a neighbor once and she was home from doing she was a career person away at work. And she said, oh, today's why are you home? Oh, I chose a mental health day. I was like, yep. Mental health day? Maybe I should take one of those. Okay, so people in normal jobs where you're getting a paycheck, they take mental health days. In school, John, yes, you have in-service days. And they're only teaching 36 weeks, 5 days a week. They get days off and still get paid and still come to school. And that's besides the vacation all summer, right? But as moms, we don't ever get a day off because when we take our teacher hat off, we're still got the mom hat on. So Johnny, you're absolutely right. Even if you just say, I need a day, we cannot do school today. And if that means my kids watch 3 movies in one day so that I can do something, they are not going to end up in juvie because one day you had them watch a few movies.
And you might pick a historic movie for them to watch.
But what if they eat Fruit Loops for every meal that day and watch
because they can fix it themselves?
Yes, but if they're too young. But so I'm just saying you are not going to destroy them because one day you say, I have to have a break. As a matter of fact, that's probably the one day of their whole childhood they'll still remember when they're 35. Remember that day Mom let us eat Fruit Loops and watch movies all day? Oh, that was the best. That's what's going to happen.
I was going to say, we always do an end of the year celebration like that, where I let the kids get whatever snack food they want. They get to check the books in the library and they lay around in pajamas and read their fun books and eat all the junk food they want. And I don't regulate it. That's their one day all year. And they look forward to that. And they will try to get their school done earlier so that we can celebrate that day sooner. I love what you said about not taking spring break too, and like how that was bad for your family. I actually do the opposite. I do not build in a spring break because it gives me more flexibility if somebody comes to town or we're traveling or something like that, that I can take other days off in the spring and not feel guilty about it because, oh, well, we didn't take spring break, so now we're taking it now. So yeah, look at your family, look at when you're home, when you travel, do you have relatives coming to see you? You know, we live a long way from family. So when people come to visit, we stop everything because we get to see each other as often. But if I had grandma up the street, you know, I might run things differently. So, you know, make sure that you're looking at that and what works for your family. Let's talk about, though, people that maybe don't have a big network or a big community, or, you know, because some of the things we're talking about, taking time to yourself, you do need to rely on somebody, especially if you have littles, to watch those kids while you're doing those things. But what about if you're a single parent or you're new to an area and you don't have a built-in community yet? You know, how do you make time to recharge or, you know, find that community of other people to spend time with?
Yeah, I was going to say, so maybe Jonna could tackle the community piece. I would like to say that, okay, it's so hard. And I believe that God has special grace and mercy for parents who are trying to do this on their own. We know that God has a special place in his heart for the widow and the orphan. And I think that encompasses single parents. And so when you are, if you are able, and I don't know, this probably isn't a new concept, but having your children go to bed at a decent time can be really helpful. And so I know for everyone that some people don't believe in that, or they are kids, they say, oh, our kids are just up late, it doesn't matter. If you could have your children in bed at a decent time, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and train them to do that, that gives you an evening breather. I'm thankful that that's the way we started out with our children. It didn't become like this battle later, because it just was the expectation starting out. So if you can organize your life that way, or if you're the opposite and say they do stay up late, but they sleep in the morning, that gives you an opportunity to be up in the morning without them for a little bit. That is really helpful. And that, obviously, there's always going to be anomalies. I remember to always say, okay, I'm going to get up before the children, and it would not fail. One of them would wake up, right? Or I have this perfect plan to have time alone in the evening. They're all in bed, and one of them is up sick in the night. Okay. We have to die to ourselves sometimes, but that can be one thing as a single parent, and obviously just leaning hard into Jesus. And I'm not saying that tritely.
No. Yes. It's like, for community is that's a whole other homeschool monster, or whatever you want to call it. They're out there. The communities are there. Even in the most rural communities, there are other homeschoolers, and they're dying to get to know other homeschoolers and have interaction. When we lived in Kentucky, we were not far from a metropolis, but we were pretty out there. But we quickly found others. But it took Facebook or going to the library, letting the librarian know, hey, we're homeschoolers. And she was quick to say, oh, are you part of this homeschool group? Do you know this homeschool group? That family over there, they homeschool. That was a huge asset for finding a connection. And that included a library that was not much bigger than my house. So, and I think I probably had more books in my children's section at home than I did at the library that we were near. And then church.
Yes. I was going to say, pray. God, show me a church, show me a community. Give me who my children and I need at this moment, at this stage. And don't be afraid. It's always scary to put yourself in a new situation and to try church. Especially, I think, Sunny, you specifically said for single parents who might feel very alone. That is scary and hard, but pray that there are Christians who have a heart for you and for your situation. And don't be afraid to make that trek of like, we're going to try here, we're going to try here, we're going to try here, and trust God that he will bring people around you. And it might not look like you expected, but he will be faithful to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think getting the word out there that, hey, I'm homeschooling, I'm looking for people. Sometimes we don't think to do that. But I actually got an email just yesterday from the youth pastor at our church saying, hey, we have a new family in town. They're looking for other homeschool families. We saw that you homeschool your daughter, because I had filled it out on a form somewhere, and they have a daughter the same age. Can I give them your email address? And, so things like that, that this is a family we haven't met yet, that I never would have met had I not been open about the fact that, oh, hey, we homeschool our kids. Of course, our online communities here in the Sonlight Connections app and on Facebook, if you're looking specifically for Sonlighters. You mentioned the library as well as a great place. Really anywhere that you can be out during the day. I used to take my kids to Chick-fil-A to play in the play place in the afternoon, and you find a ton of homeschoolers there because they're also off during the day. So yeah, just being open to it. And I know if you run more towards being introverted yourself, you may not think about those things. But rec sports too are great. You don't have to keep your kids just in a homeschool box. My kids do rec sports in our local community with kids that go to school, kids that are homeschooled. There's lots of options that way as well. Because like I said, we live a long way from family. When we moved here, I had one friend from college that I knew in the state that I live in now. And so yeah, finding those opportunities to meet people are great. Before we wrap up and head into announcements, do you guys have any last words of advice or encouragement to share?
Well, Sunny, one thing that you just said about the online community, I just want to highlight that, because we have lots of people who jump on the app that say, I don't know what I would do without this community, because they live in another country, maybe, or they live in a very rural area. So the online community is super encouraging and super helpful. I think one more thing I would say about burnout, don't future trip. One of the reasons I tend to get burned out or feel like a failure is because I'm future tripping and thinking, oh no, what about 10 years from now? What about whatever? Stop. We're not guaranteed to live another day on this earth. So what am I doing today to honor God in what He's put in front of me? Whether that's children or a ministry or my housework or whatever, what is it in front of me today? And how can I honor Him today?
I was going to say, I can't put better words than what Amber said. Online community is great for the mom, though. So when you're having burnout, it's a great place to find that and that just can come along to you and support you and lift you up.
Yeah, no, you're not alone.
Sometimes we just need our friends. And sometimes if we're too far out, or, it's not a time where you can get out with the kids and everything, just having that, in the afternoon, let them have 10 minutes of playing puzzles, and you can get online and just see who's out there and get some support.
Absolutely. Because if you post in there, I'm having a bad day, I don't know what to do, I guarantee you other people will jump on there and say, oh yeah, this is what I do, or why don't you try this, or why don't you just spend time, commiserating with us. It does make it a lot easier. Amber, I love what you said. Yeah, don't think too far in the future. Tomorrow has enough worries of its own. Right. When I start to get stressed like that, I'm like, what do I need to do for the next 5 minutes? And then, okay, what do I need to do for the next 5 minutes? Yeah. And that's such great advice. Don't worry about the end road. At this point, I'm planning to homeschool all the way through, but that was definitely not my original plan, and it changes from year to year. So such great advice from both of you. Before we wrap up, I did want to give you guys a few announcements about what's coming for those of you watching. And if we did not get to your question today, please put it in the replay, and the mentors and I will be in there, and we will make sure that we respond to you. But printed catalogs are out. So I just got mine. If you have not requested one, go ahead and do that online, and they will come to you in the mail, or you can download the digital catalog as well if you want to see what's coming in 2023. Also, convention season is starting. So come see Sonlight at conventions. You can see all the ladies you see in these videos at the conventions, and they will show you products. If you really like to get your hands on things or see what you're going to be ordering, definitely go to a convention. That schedule of where Sonlight's going to be is at sonlight.com/conventions. But if you do not live near a convention, don't worry. We do still have our online summit coming in the summer, June 1st and 2nd, which will cover a lot of topics like this all in one place. So if you can't make it to a convention, you can still get advice for you. Also, right now in the month of March, we have all of our promotions and freebies. We have the planner with tabs, the Sonlight tote, our lowest prices on 2022 products. So if you want a package that really isn't changing much, or you want some of those freebies, definitely order in March. Then on March 30th, all the new 2023 products will be available. So keep an eye on sonlight.com/sale for all of April's freebies and promotions as well. This really is the best time to buy. I always place my own orders in March and April to get all those freebies, the promotions, payment plans. Also, if you do not want to pay for your order all at once, we do have payment plans available in March and April as well. And if you're not watching us in the app, if you're watching us on Big Marker, the link you got through your email, make sure you join us in the Sonlight Connections app. We've already referenced it, but you have a whole community there. You have our Sonlight mentors. There's more live events and videos there to help you along on your homeschool journey. And then make sure you join us for next month's Homeschool Helps and Hacks in April. That one's Balancing Life's Juggling Act. So if you want more specific suggestions on how to do it all while you're homeschooling, so things like cleaning routines, meal prepping, making time to be a good spouse, all of the things that we lightly touched on today, but you want more specific suggestions, join us for that on April 20th. And that will be our last Homeschool Helps and Hacks of the spring before we move into our Online Connection Summit in June, and then take a little bit of a hiatus before the fall. So Amber, Jonna, thank you so much, ladies, for being here. That was a lot of announcements, but I am so glad to have you guys here. And like I said, I could listen to you talk for hours on this topic. So remember, if you are watching us and you need us, let us know. We are there. We would love to help you, pray with you, commiserate, whatever it is that you need at that moment, because we are all on this journey as well. And so we've been there, and I appreciate both of you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Sunny.
Thanks, Sunny.